Hi guys, we've got a treat for you today. This is the one you've been waiting for. We're doing a really great car animation from scratch, using all free resources so you can follow along with every step. We're going to be creating this great Bugatti animation, this car driving across the bridge, lots of different car angles. We're going to be learning about cameras, lighting, drivers, the compositor, and loads more pro tips in this one. You're going to absolutely love it. Let's get started.
So starting with a fresh Blender scene, you can see down here on the bottom left, you can see all the keys that I'm pressing on the keyboard if you're stuck at any time. So for a start, we're going to delete everything. So we're going to press A to select everything, X to delete everything. Then we're going to hop over to Blender Kit. And first, we're going to download some scenery for our car to go in. If you haven't downloaded Blender Kit yet, it's well worth a download. There's absolutely tons of free models, textures, HDRs. It's really worth it. And if you really like it and you want to access all the content, the paid membership is actually really great value. I'll put a link in the description below. So I've actually logged out of Blender Kit at the minute because I want to make sure all the assets that I use are free. So you can basically join it in if you've never used Blender Kit before. So we're going to put under the search filters free first. I'm going to search for a bridge. Okay, so you just literally click on the asset to download it and it automatically downloads it into the scene. We're also going to download a canyon, and this first one called Canyon Mountains. That looks great. Right, you probably need to zoom out a bit because this one is huge. So if you're struggling to see the edge of the canyon, you need to go to your tool. You need to go to your view menu and you need to set the end clip. So instead of 1,000 meters, I should put 10,000 meters. Now you should be able to see the whole of the canyon. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll just grab that with G and Z just to move it down a little bit. Where's our bridge gone? There it is. Okay, so the bridge is going to need to scale up a bit as well. So I think we'll do that next. So click on the bridge, just press G to grab just to make sure you've got the right thing, then press escape to cancel that. I'm going to press S to scale and type in 20. Okay, that looks reasonable. We might tweak it in a minute. Let's try that for a start. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, let's light the scene. So we're going to grab a HDRI and I'm just going to search for a sunset. Now really you can pick any of these that you like. Sunset with clouds looks quite nice. Let's try this one for a start. This is your resolution of your HDRI. 2000 should be okay for most of you. If you've got a nice fast PC, you can probably go for 4000 like that. Press OK. Right, so we've kind of got the basic scene set up. So just for ease of use, we're going to have the car going from left to right on the bridge. So what I'll do, I'm just going to zoom in over here, shift and right click to put my 3D cursor down here. And then when the car spawns in, it should spawn in on this part of the road here with a bit of luck. So the next thing I'm going to do is add the car. So we're going to look for a Bugatti. And this one's a nice one, the Bugatti Vendredi. So just going to click it to load it. And then if you select it in the viewport and then press the full stop key or the period key on your number pad, it will zoom into the Bugatti. So let's have a quick look at this in render mode. So if you go to your render settings, we're going to change it from EV to cycles. Device should be set to GPU compute. Denoise should be set on. In the viewport, the max samples 32 should be okay. And in the render, I think we'll go for 64 samples in the render. And under denoise, just make sure use GPU is selected because that speeds things up quite a bit if you've got a GPU. Okay, click over here to view it in render mode. And already you can see we're getting somewhere. Okay, so let's get the car facing the right way. I'm going to hop back into viewport shading mode, click on the Vendredi and just rotate it with R key and Z to rotate it on the Z axis. And we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. So you can literally just type in RZ90 to do that. Okay, and let's add a camera in as well. So Shift and A. Add the camera, and to get the camera to match the viewport, you can press Control, Alt and 0 on your number pad, and that will move the camera straight to match the viewport display. So I'll quick look at that in render mode. Yeah, that's looking pretty nice. Okay, so I think what we're going to need to do, I'd like to add in some, sorry, I just noticed that. So under the camera settings, you know where we changed the viewport display up here to 10,000. Also need to do it with the camera. So under your camera lens, if you want to set the end to 10,000, that should stop it clipping out when you go into camera view. That's better. Right, so let's change a few things. So the car looks great, but this color is not standing out very well. So we're going to go into Blender Kit and we're going to look for a material and we'll search for car paint. You can pretty much choose whichever paint you want really for this. Maybe something with, something quite bright. Let's try this one here. You can literally drag and drop it onto the body of the Bugatti. It'll change the color of the car just like that. I think what's happening is the scene's quite dark because this HDRI is not very bright. So I think we're going to add some extra lights into the scene. So there's two things I want to do. I want to add some street lights for a start. And I also want to add some sort of ground level lights to make sure these wheels pop out nicely. So to do that, I'm going to shift and right click on this part of the bridge here, on sort of the wall of the bridge. And we're going to do shift and A to add in a mesh cylinder. Now, it doesn't need to be very high resolution, so 32 vertices is probably too many. So let's swap that down to maybe 8. You can see it kind of goes to this octagon shape. And we're going to rotate it on the x-axis and S to scale and scale it down quite small like that. Let's just have a look at that a bit closer. So I'm just going to press G to grab and we're just going to move that. And I'm just eyeballing this really, so it pops out of the side of the road here. I'm just going to rotate it a little bit more just to match it in. So it's R to rotate and G to grab. I just kind of want these little lights sort of popping out the side just like that really. So yeah, just get that roughly in the right place so you're happy with it. And then we're going to add an emission material to this light. So if you click on the material settings, I'm going to click new. And we can change this from principled BSDF to an emission shader at the top. And here you can actually see we can actually change the color of the light here to to whatever color you like. I might go for a little red color just for a bit of fun. And you can also change the strength. Now this more or less equates to the strength of an area light. So I think 10 watts might be enough to start, but we can change it a bit later if we want to. Okay, so what I want to do next, let's click on the bridge and then press period on our number key just to zoom right out. I'm just holding down a shift and move it using my middle mouse button. We're going to move this light all the way to the end of the road here. So G to grab, X to move along the x-axis. Sorry, let's select the light first. In fact, double click that to rename it. Let's call it wall light. I'm going to press G to grab, X to move on the x-axis, and move it right to the start of the bridge. And then we're going to use the array modifier, or add a modifier, search for array. And what we're going to do, we're going to move it along the x-axis, and it's not especially important again where it goes. Let's just zoom in a bit on that. So I kind of want this to go basically all along the side of the bridge. So let's just see if there's any rotation on that. Let's just do Control A and apply all the transforms. That's better. Okay, so now when we array modify it, you can see it's going right along the bridge. And you can just add as many as you need, to get it right to the end of the bridge. 127 is about right for me. Press 0 on your number pad to drop back into camera view. And now you can start to see we've got these nice lights sort of illuminating that side of the car. I might actually duplicate these as well. Shift D to duplicate, and we'll just move them on the y-axis to maybe the center reservation. I'm going to press R to rotate them, Let's just disable the array modifier for a second. Press period on your number pad again. Okay, so we need to set the origin point of this to the geometry. So if you go up to the object menu, set origin to geometry, and now when we rotate it, it'll move along, you know, inside the geometry. So I'm just going to eyeball this again. Just going to G to grab. We're just going to place it sort of inside of the wall. I might just move it down a bit again there. Let's re-enable the array modifier. Back to the camera view. Ooh, you know what we've done? Not applied the rotation. So Control and A, apply all transforms. There we go. It's now running along the other side of the road. Okay, so we've got some nice lights now either side of the road. I might add some street lights as well. Naught to go into camera mode. Let's just hold down Shift and middle mouse button. We're going to right click the cursor on here on the central reservation. I'm going to do Shift A and we're going to add in a mesh cube. Right, period on your number pad just so the viewpoint is centered around this cube. S to scale. Press tab to go into edit mode. We're going to go to face select up here, or you can press number 3 on your keyboard. And we're just going to press G to grab and Z to grab in the Z direction. Right. Let's think, how high do we want these streetlights to be? D to grab, Z to move up. I'm just going to guess that, so I reckon that's roughly 5 times the height of the car. That's probably not high enough, is it? Let's go a bit higher. Okay, and then what we can do, you can press E to extrude, extrude just a small amount, and then select this face on the side here, E to extrude, and we're going to extrude just a small amount again, and E to extrude about half again. So what we're going to do, we're going to basically make this part of here illuminated. So we'll add 2 materials to this lamp. So what we do, just tab out of edit mode. With the lamp still selected, let's rename it to lamp. We're going to add a basic material, so just click new. We're just going to set this to a grey material. Because what's going to happen is we're going to be moving quite fast with the car, so all these street lamps are going to be quite blurred, so we don't really need to worry about modelling them with too much accuracy. So tab back into edit mode, we're going to select this panel here underneath. I'm going to click plus to add a new material, and we're going to call this, let's call it light. And this time, instead of using the emission shader, we're just going to go to the emission control here, increase that. Let's set that to 10. And maybe tweak the colour very slightly to like an orange colour. And then the last thing we need to do was, with this part of the lamp selected, if you press the light and then assign, it will actually assign that material just onto that part of the mesh. Tab out of edit mode and we've got our first street lamp. Okay, great. Let's move it back down the road. So I'm going to swivel around again so we've got it facing this way. G to grab, X to move it on the X axis, move it to the end of the bridge, and we're going to add the array modifier again. Factor X, just again, whatever you think is appropriate. Let's set mine to 80. Then the count, we're going to increase the count so they go all the way to the other end of the bridge, which in my case is about 50. Okay. 0 to get back into camera view. Okay, so we've got some street lamps going now. And I think we need to make these a bit brighter. So we're going to, with the lamp selected, we're going to increase the emission strength to, let's say 500. Okay, you can start to see these lamps starting to light this road up now. Let's go a little bit more. We can always come back to this and alter it later. Okay, so we're starting to get some good light now coming from these street lamps. Right, back to the car. So select your Bugatti in the viewport. Let's just get this going down the road. G to grab. Let's just go back into viewport shading. I'm going to press G to grab, Z to move it down, and I'm looking, you see these bottom of the tyres here, I'm just looking till they intersect with the road. So G to grab, Z to move down, and just before they start to disappear, I'm going to pop them there. And I'm also going to move this onto the left side of the road as I'm looking at it. So G to grab, Y to move on the Y axis, and let's move it over here, because I want these lights in the road here to be lighting up this car as we see it. In fact, let's do the same with the camera. G to grab, Y to move in the Y axis, and let's just have a look at that. I think we could do that a bit further again. So G to grab, Y to move in the Y axis. Okay, so we're starting to get quite a nice looking viewport now. Right, let's have a few little tweaks. So I think what we'll do, we'll mess with the HDRI a little bit first. So if you click on the world properties setting over here, and you can twirl down this little arrow here that says color, and then twirl down the arrow next to vector, you can actually see now we can actually rotate the HDRI around the map. So what I'm looking for is kind of what makes a nice, what is going to give us a nice angle. So maybe a mixture of clouds, some blue sky, so we've got some light over this side of the car. That looks quite nice, got a nice contrast there. Now's a good time to save your work if you haven't done so yet. So it's file save, and if you want to have a quick render at any point, you can press F12. Okay, we've got a pretty nice looking render there. Okay, let's see what else we can do with it. So I think the next steps are going to be to add some animation to the car. So what we'll do, we'll kind of cheat really. So let's start by clicking on the front wheel. And if you press R and rotate, you'll find one of these values. Let's find out which one it is. In fact, let's go back to the viewport shading mode. You'll find, ooh, not that one. Maybe we're clicking the wrong thing. Let's try that. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll click on the brake disc, the alloy wheel and the tyre, and we'll press Ctrl and J to join those into one object. And now when we rotate on the X-axis, we can see that the wheel is spinning. So I think for the purposes of this, we're not going to rig the car or anything, but we just want to see the wheels spinning on the car. So what we'll do, we're going to add a driver into this X rotation here. And so if you click on the rotation here and type in #frame, what it does, it'll basically take the frame number and use that as a reference for the wheel animation. We'll do the same for the back wheel. So click on the brake disc, the alloy wheel and the tyre, Ctrl J to join, and let's just check it's still the X. It's not the X there. Okay, so what we've got here, you can see this yellow sort of orange dot in the middle of the car. That's the anchor point for this object, or the origin point. And we want the origin point to actually be in the center of this wheel. So if you go to Object, Set Origin to Geometry, I don't think that's quite square. Let's have a quick look. No, it's not quite square. So what we'll do, so I'm just going to press 1 on the number pad to go to sort of orthogonal side view. Go to your options and click Affect Only Origins, and we're just going to press G to grab, Z to grab on the Z axis, and we're just going to move that up. In fact, I think we can get that even closer. G to grab, X to move on the X axis, G to grab, Z to move on the Z axis. So actually using these little reference points on here just to make sure we're more or less in the center of the wheel. Okay, go back to options, don't forget to switch that off, otherwise it'll really annoy you later when you can't work out what's going on. So now when we rotate this on the X axis, you can see we just got the wheel spinning in the center. So #frame in there again, and that puts a driver on those wheels. So now when we press play on the animation, you'll see both of those wheels are spinning. I think maybe we want them to spin a little bit faster. Okay, so what we can do, if you right click, delete the driver, and type in #frame times 0.5, that should make it spin quite a bit faster. Let's try that on the other one as well. Okay, and by the time we've got some motion blur on those, you won't be able to tell which way is the wheel spinning or not. Okay, so the other thing we want to do is obviously get the car moving. So the car has got a central empty. Let's just find it. It's just there. If you just click on it in the outline, that should find it. And now you can grab the car and you can move it, and you can constrain it to the x-axis by pressing X. So what we'll do, in fact, before we do that, we'll parent the camera to the car. So I'll tell you what you can do. An easy way to do it is click on the car first, hold down the shift key and then click on the camera, press Ctrl and P and set the parent to the object, keeping the transform. And now when we move the car, you'll see the camera moves alongside with it. Okay, so just zoom out a bit. Go to frame 0. With the car selected, we're going to press K for keyframe. We're going to have a location keyframe selected. Go to frame 180. Let's press G to grab the car, X to grab the car on the X-axis, and move the car towards the end of the bridge. Press K again for a keyframe and set another location keyframe. Now you'll see the car. In fact, if we go to camera view and press play, you'll see the car is moving along the bridge pretty nicely. So to stop the car kind of being slow at the beginning and slowing down at the end of the animation, with the mouse in this kind of area at the bottom, the playback area, press A to select all the keyframes, T for interpolation, and set it to linear interpolation. And that means now that the car is at a constant speed right throughout the animation. So if we go back to the render settings up here and we click motion blur, and now we render one of these frames, press F12, you can see we get a nice motion blur on both the alloy wheels, these lights going by here, and also the lampposts passing by. So you get a really nice sense of motion from the car, which will look even better when it's animated. Just going to tweak the camera a little bit. You see kind of in the distance there, we can still see the end of the bridge. I don't really want to see that at all. So I'm just going to press, in fact, we can do this another way. If you go to view, navigation, and then go down to walk navigation, you can use the W, A, S and D keys to walk around the car, and also move your mouse to just adjust the angle of where you want it to be. So I'm going to angle, I think what we'll do, in fact, let's change the camera to slightly wider angle. So by clicking on the camera icon, so with that selected, go to the camera icon and set the focal length to something like 28mm, which is a wide angle lens. Okay, sorry. Now go back to your walk navigation settings. We're going to move in a bit with the W key. I'm going to come down a bit with the, maybe not too much actually. And I'm just going to move the mouse so we can kind of, so you see the bit in the background at the end of the bridge. I'm going to move the mouse just so we can't see that anymore. And now when you move the camera, we've kind of got this viewpoint here. It would also be nice to add a little bit of shake onto the camera. So what we'll do, with the camera still selected, I'm just going to put a keyframe in here. So I'm going to add a single keyframe in here. Then if you go to the animation tab and change this to be the graph editor, let's have a look. So you can see here we've got just a single keyframe on the Z location. And by adding a noise modifier, so click on modifiers and then going to noise, you can see we actually have, let's just zoom in a bit on this so you can see it better. So now you can see the camera actually moves up and down as if the camera's shaking. We don't want the effect to be too over exaggerated. So what you can actually do is reduce the strength of the noise and increase the scale a little bit so it's a bit more subtle. So now when that's maybe a little too subtle. Let's just increase the scale. So you kind of just want to have a sense of motion when you're watching that camera moving up and down, like it's being, like it's in another car and the other car is moving up and down a bit. So I think if you kind of set the values to something around 6 for the scale and 0.2 for the strength, you should just about be okay in terms of getting a nice sense of motion. What else would be nice is to have some sort of reflection, like puddles on the road surface. There's a few different ways we could do this, but the quickest way would be to go to Blender Kit and search for a glass material. So let's search for a material called wet glass. And I'm just literally going to drag and drop this onto the road. Okay, and we've very quickly just simulated some nice puddles there for the car to be on. So when we render it, we'll get some nice reflections in the road of the car, which looks great. Let's do a quick render. Okay, that looks really cool. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do before we render the animation, I'm going to add a bit of glow using the compositor to make some of these lights pop just a fraction more. So if you hop over into the compositing tab and click use nodes, we'll press Shift and A and we'll add a viewer node. Let's just search for that and drop that over here and go from the image to here. And if you hold down Shift, right click your mouse and drag that along those two lines, they make kind of this little joiny vertex thing, which is quite handy. Okay, so now basically the image is being fed to the viewer, which we can see here, and also to the composite, which is the kind of the final output that we're going to have for this. So we're going to add in Shift A, let's add in just search for a glare node and drop that in there. And we're going to change it from streaks to bloom. And we're going to change the threshold to be a little bit higher. So the threshold is the point at which the brightest lights in the scene become used for the bloom. So you can see we're just getting a little fraction off here. So I just want the headlights to be blooming a bit. And then we can just tweak the mix down just so it's quite subtle, so you kind of don't get too much glare off it. And you can, this is personal choice, however you want it to look is up to you. Under the scene tab over here, we can set color management, and we're just going to change the look from none to high contrast. Maybe that's too much. Let's go for medium high contrast. And I think we could also, let's just search for a, what's it called? Lens distortion. And if we add just a touch of dispersion, it kind of gives this slightly fringed look over here, which kind of is quite nice. And if you want to see those things in the viewport, you can actually go up here where it says compositor. You can actually add it to the camera, so it'll add all those compositor settings right here in the camera display of the viewport, so we can see what everything looks like as it's rendered. Another thing we could do, let's go to the camera again and just maybe we could just tweak the angle of the camera just slightly to give a bit more drama, like a Dutch angle to the shot. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll render this out and we'll see how it looks. So I'm going to set the last frame to 180. Go to the output settings. We're going to change the file format to FF MPEG video, the encoding to MPEG-4, the output quality to perceptually lossless. I'm going to set a destination for our file as well. Don't forget to save and then press render animation. Yeah, so that's looking pretty sweet now. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to render this animation out with a few different camera angles and edit them all together to create a final animation. Okay, so I've spent a few more minutes on this now. So in addition to the first camera, I've just set up another 4 cameras. One is attached to the car, sort of car wheel. One is a camera which kind of just goes across the road. Another is kind of a camera which captures the car from just across the bridge. And the last camera is a camera which goes just underneath the car to capture the car going over it. So I'm just going to edit all of these takes together to make a final video.